Hey guys, what's up? Today I'm doing a draft preview, and it's a very special episode because I have my good friend Andrew Halling on the show. Andrew, thanks for coming on.
Thank you for having me on.
All right, so I decided to do a mock draft, and you kind of did one too. It's obviously a lot of work, and we put a lot of hours into it. But as these things happen, they always change no matter what, but this year a lot of big changes have happened pretty soon.
It's been pretty crazy the last couple of weeks. Trade happened with the LA Rams,
Yep.
as we both know, as everybody knows, to number one, and then the Titans went down, and we'll get into what our thoughts on that. But then I didn't really see Philly moving up to number two. I thought that was a pretty bold move.
Yeah, I didn't either. All I heard was that Philadelphia was second in the running for the number one pick that the Rams got. And that was the day before they made the trade, and I was like, oh, well, that kind of sucks, like, whatever. And then all of a sudden they made the trade. It was like, holy shit. So
Yeah, exactly my thoughts. I mean, just sticking with our guns on Philly there, with everything that's happened in Philadelphia with Chip Kelly, so many risks taken last year with very little reward. It's really amazing that they are going into this again. And I thought consistency, just playing consistent football, getting 8 wins a season would be their project this year. And it really it could pan out. You don't know how these things will go, but you take a big risk, and it doesn't pan out. That's another hit in Philly.
Yeah, that's a couple years setback. At least I like this move better than what they did last year, because when you're building through free agency, you're building kind of for the now, for the next couple years. And at least they're taking a chance in the draft, which isn't a guarantee, but at least you're at least thinking of the future, not just of the next couple years. And I think it's the Eagles GM came out and said, Sam Bradford's still our starting quarterback, meaning they pay him the most money, so he has.
And I think he was actually, some highlights in the media was he wasn't too happy with the move, obviously, because he's been on a downward spiral since he came into the NFL.
Yeah, I've never been high on him when he was coming out of college. I didn't really like him, and then, like I said, he had an okay rookie year, and since then it's been a lot of injuries and a lot of mediocre play.
Which is funny that he was playing for the St. Louis Rams.
Right.
And they're working on potentially maybe doing the same thing. Now, should we talk about that LA Rams trade a little bit?
So now, the reason we're doing this is because when I did my mock draft, I started it almost a month ago, and a lot of stuff changes anyway, but with these huge trades, we kind of had to talk about it, because otherwise my mock draft was basically...
This NFL draft is just spiraling into something that we didn't know exactly what was going to happen.
So, let's talk about the trades here. So, like we said, the LA Rams now traded to number 1 with Tennessee, so Tennessee moves to 15, I believe.
Correct.
And then the Eagles traded for number 8 with the Browns to go to number 2. So with number 1, there's obviously 2 quarterbacks that everybody's talking about towards the high end of the draft, which is Jared Goff and Carson Wentz. I don't know which one the Rams are going to go for.
And I don't think the Rams know who they're going for. I mean, if you move up to number 1, usually you would think you'd say, hey, we're going with this guy. This is our solid pick at number 1. And that's not what they're doing. It's almost like they said, we're doing this, we're grabbing the number 1 spot, but we're not sure how this is all going to pan out.
Yeah.
And the LA Rams aren't sure how their season's going to pan out either.
No.
With Fisher in as coach, and he hasn't put together a very solid. Has he had a? Well, that's a tough division, first of all, and then St. Louis Rams. I mean, it's a defensive. You got the Cardinals, you got the Seahawks, you got the 49ers, and the Rams, and all those teams have to play solid defense, and all of them have. And then you have to try and put together a solid offense. And Fisher, I think, is just there's a lot of people saying that he's just grabbing onto things and just trying to hang on.
Yeah,
for a
and
few more
it's
years.
there's something to be said about the business end of it on a lot of things. And I think one of them is getting a lot of excitement built for the
And
city
with
of
the new
LA.
move, right?
Put asses in seats. This is a big move. It gets a lot of media, and I think they benefit from having not saying who they're going to take, so that we and everyone in the media keep saying who are they going to take, Goff or Wentz, and they're not going to give a definitive answer because they want people talking about it. They want to get people excited.
Yeah, let's talk about those
So-
LA Rams. Let's
Yeah, exactly. So-
yeah.
And LA is a big market, and I'm excited for it because LA really should have a football team. It's kind of dumb that they went so long without having one. And St. Louis is such a
I don't mind
Dump down.
St. Louis. I mean,
it's an old it's been in the
I
league for a
don't.
long
I'm not a
time.
huge fan of like Oakland, San Diego. Yeah, they should, but they should have a winning franchise in San Diego.
Yeah.
I would have liked the Oakland Raiders move to LA or even to San Antonio.
When they were talking about going to Las Vegas, that was so exciting.
Right.
That would have been awesome. That would have been the best thing ever.
It would have been Coliseum in
Yep.
Vegas, right? Yeah.
But unfortunately, yeah, Las Vegas, I don't know if that's a big enough. Because it's Las Vegas and then desert and then
Yeah.
California. So I don't know if there's enough money there to be made.
Well, is there enough money in Oakland? I mean, I don't
I don't
know. But
Yeah, apparently there is. I don't know. But, all right, so for the number one, I don't know. What do you think, Andrew? Would you go, if you were the Rams GM, would you go Goff or Wentz?
absolutely go Goff. I don't feel like Wentz, his play style, he's in St. Louis. Look at Bradford. I mean, Bradford was supposed to be a scrambling quarterback, pressure, and they do say that Wentz can handle it under pressure. I just feel like Goff fits into that system a lot better than Wentz does. Wentz, I see more like almost like an RG3 or something where he can scramble around a little bit and maybe make some plays like the Ben Roethlisberger or something like that. Goff, I think they have a great running game in LA, that's for sure, and I like him. What about you? What do you think?
Yeah, that's a tough pick because when you give up so much to go to number one, you kind of need it to work out, honestly. Because this sets you back at least, at the very least, 3 years.
3 years.
But
3 years. I
probably-
mean, that's the amount of draft picks that they
Yeah.
pushed it all the way out to 2018.
But it could
so-
be up to 6, honestly, depending on what deal they sign with that quarterback. So a lot of people, what they're saying right now is that Jared Goff is more pro-ready. But I honestly think that Carson Wentz is... I like Carson Wentz more than Jared Goff just because he'll say it all the time, but there's something to be said about winning games. And Jared Goff, the only knock on him, one of them is that he didn't win a lot of games. Even though he's in a bigger school, a better system, playing better teams, didn't win a lot of games. Carson Wentz, I don't always buy into the not as good competition thing because if you watch his tape, Carson Wentz is clearly on a different level than all those guys. And just because he went to a smaller school, there's so many undrafted players that are in the Hall of Fame right now that went to smaller schools. So
And Fisher actually coached one of them. Steve
true.
McNair.
Yeah,
Correct?
Yeah.
Yeah, and McNair was a AA college, and so Fisher has had that type of person come into a system before and done pretty well with them.
Yeah, but if I was the GM, I would probably go Jared Goff, just because I think it's a safer pick, and as far as money's concerned, I think that you got to do the safer pick. And I do agree with you that I think he fits there.
One more thing about the Goff Wentz. Wentz, I see him. I think Wentz has a better upside. I really do. But as far as how they play football now in LA with the running, Goff hasn't run a huge system, and that's one of the worries is that he'll get this playbook that's as thick as whatever.
Yeah.
But LA, they don't need to run Pittsburgh offense or
Right.
Seattle. Well, Seattle runs a pretty simple offense,
Mm-hmm.
and I think in LA with the running capabilities, I mean they were having to stack 8 guys in the box against LA last year, and You need somebody that can execute the basics and not try and do more than what he needs to do. Keep it really simple in LA. Let your defense win some games for you, and just keep the scoreboard close. I think that's all they need to do. Run out the clock, pound the ball. That's how they've played football in the past, and that's what I've always liked about them.
Yeah, and I think you're right with Carson Wentz. He's gonna want to make more plays, and the biggest difference I see between these two is I think Jared Goff fits in a system easier. Like, he can come into an existing system. I think with Carson Wentz, you're gonna have to build a system around him.
Right.
Because there'll be that learning curve. So, okay, so then if we take Goff at number 1, Eagles, Carson Wentz, easy choice.
And that's actually, I don't know. I say, why would you go to number 2 without drafting a quarterback?
That, basically.
I'm just saying it's not completely locked in. There's a lot of Philly fans that don't want that to happen, that I've talked to.
Yeah. I don't know.
They just made that move for Bradford last year, and they did the same thing with Murray, and
Yeah, I don't know. I look at it like, I think fans forget. Well, I don't know if they forget, but I think they view the draft differently than what the GMs view it, and how it took me a lot of years to realize what a successful draft looks like. Because when you first get into the draft, as a fan, I'm saying, like, your team, you think, all right, we need a receiver, we need a defensive back, and we need a defensive tackle. So immediately in your mind, you think, all right, we're going to take a receiver in the first round, DB in the second round, D tackle in the third round. That's not how it works. Because
it's a Powerball. You don't know who's going to go before you.
Exactly.
You got to have that draft board.
And
ready.
so the point is that you always take the best player available. With the Vikings, I'm a Vikings fan.
Right.
With the Vikings in 2007, we had Chester Taylor, who was a 1,000-yard rusher in 2006. We didn't need a running back, but Adrian Peterson was on the board. We take him because he was the best player available on our board. We didn't need a running back. He ended up being, I would say, top 10 running backs of all time. And I don't think that's stretching it at all. I think he could maybe be top 5. So
AP is a great running back. I don't think anybody can argue that.
So I'm just saying that the draft isn't to make the playoffs this year. It's to help your team literally in the following 2, 3, 4 years, not just this year. And if you can turn around in 1 year, that's great. But it's really for the years to come. So that's why you always take the best player available. Because look at all the teams that passed on Tom Brady or passed on Joe Montana. If you look back to the 80s now, we look and say, yeah, look at all the teams that passed on Joe Montana. How can you miss on that? And they said, well, we had Steve Berline at quarterback. We didn't need it. Who is that? That's the thing about the draft. When you look back, it doesn't matter if but yet you don't want to derail your franchise. By. The point is, it's for the future, and you're not going to help your team by reaching for players or getting guys that don't fit. It's a science, and it's nuts, and it's hard to understand, but it's not just it's not as simple as 1, 2, 3. There's a lot of different ways to go through it. So we won't go through all the picks just because it'll take too long. We've kind of been over it, but since you're a Cowboys fan. What do you think?
And we're going number 4 this year, and for me as a fan, that's really exciting. I mean, we had a terrible year last year, to say the least, but the opportunity that's been given to us, and that's how GMs are looking at this as well, is we have an opportunity here to make our team better, put more fans in the stands. If Tunsil goes number 3 to San Diego, which Ramsey could go at number 3, I would love to put Ramsey in our defense, just because he's as far as I can tell pro ready. I mean, that guy is game one, going out on the field ready to hit people and just create problems for quarterbacks.
I would say the best corner prospect since Patrick Peterson. That's
another thing is with a defensive end need that has come across recently with the Cowboys. Should we trade down? that's another thing that we've gotten in this trend of trades, and I foresee a lot more trades happening. At least one more in this first round with anybody. Just moving up, moving down. They're talking about Cleveland possibly moving down again.
Yeah.
Tennessee now has all those picks available this year, and if they wanted to try and move up for Tunsil, they potentially could, or a different different tackle. So, Cowboys, if Ramsey is on the board, I say take him. I would love Elliott in our system. Obviously, we won games when we had a solid running game. We have this offensive line that has done really, really well, and I would love another running back. Morris, I honestly don't believe he's a. He might put up 1,000 yards. So did McFadden, but he's not making those huge gains after contact. McFadden had a few of them last year. Showed some spurts, but he was tired. He's not a 3-down back kind of guy.
And you watch him and you think, come on, man. Like, I don't know. When I watched him, I was like,
there's got to be another gear there. Yeah. What's going on?
Yeah. It was
Elliott, they're saying his pass blocking is really, really well. He's a 3-down back. He can go in there and do series. We don't have to change running backs every single play.
Yeah, and in my mock, I had Elliott going to you, which you didn't like right away, but it sounds like you're coming around to it.
He's a really, really good running back, and somebody's going to be really lucky to have him in their system. I don't know if he's number 4 value, but he is a top 10 value, and somebody might try and grab him.
What I love about him is something that you see on tape from him for sure is he's got a unique burst. Like when he goes through the line, the first 40 yards is like holy shit. But the top end speed isn't always there. He's not.
The difference between good and great in the NFL as far as running backs, it's not just getting through the hole and gaining 3 yards.
Yeah.
It's getting through that hole, gaining 3 yards, and hitting another 10.
Yeah.
You know, it's that area once you get past those blockers that make or break great.
Yeah, and he's got unique, moves in the pocket, and he's shifty, he's quick, strong, but the only thing with him is that it looks good, but it's just like when it comes to breaking those really long runs, he can get caught. It's not like he's not a burner, but I think he would fit that system pretty well. He kind of reminds me of Ahmad Bradshaw back in the day. Not a guy who's super fast, a little bit smaller, but just got a lot of burst, can break tackles. So he's kind of a little bit, I think, better than Ahmad Bradshaw, hopefully. But that's just kind of the guy.
I don't really foresee the Cowboys. Going after Elliott.
I think they might. I think they might trade down, but Jalen Ramsey is probably, I think, the number 1 player in this draft.
If Ramsey goes number 3 to San Diego, and Tunsil's still on the board, look for the Cowboys to trade because somebody needs a tackle out there, and the Cowboys don't. I mean, backups are great, but he's pro ready. He's ready. He's ready to go.
And there's so many people that would want him if he fell to 4, and they know the Cowboys would be willing to trade. So they'd be right on. For sure.
Cowboys are in need of defense. There's a lot of great defensive linemen. You've been talking about it all through the draft.
Crazy.
There's defensive tackles, defensive ends, and backers going, and it's going to be insane.
Yeah.
How many times you hear defensive tackle and defensive ends in this draft, and there's a lot of good value here. And so if the Cowboys decide to trade down, or anybody for that matter, in that top 10 trade down, you'll still get a lot of good value later on in the draft, and you'll end up getting another 2nd or 3rd round pick.
Hopefully they'll all pan out. Like in 2014, they had all those receivers that went, and pretty much all of them have turned out well. Like Mike Evans, Kelvin Benjamin, Brandon Cooks, Sammy Watkins, Odell Beckham Jr., and then there were other ones too.
Right.
But there was just a lot of them, and that's what that class was. Everyone was talking about. There's a bunch of these receivers, and you're kind of like...
And you just named off all those guys, and if you watch the NFL or play fantasy football, those guys.
Those are all number ones.
Those are all people on your radar.
Yeah. So most of those guys are almost top 10 receivers in the league already.
Right. Yeah, they're getting pretty dangerous. Their names are out there.
You hope that this class of defensive tackles can be that. You never know. It's a lot about system and coaches, and
Absolutely.
there's a lot
Absolutely
of different
agree with
factors
that.
that go within. So there's a lot of unique talent, but it's pretty intimidating when you look at all the defensive end.
And I want some of them.
prospects.
I mean,
Mhm.
I definitely want some of these guys in my system.
But like
because
you
we've been
said, like
struggling.
that's a need for the Cowboys. They
Yeah.
could easily trade out of that 4 pick, and there's a slew of those just waiting to get picked. I think that would probably be the best
And then-
option for them.
So, down to number 5. Let's get away from the Cowboys here. I know they're my favorite team, but
Mhm.
down to number 5, we're the Jacksonville Jaguars. This is a team that's I feel like heating up really, really well. They're doing a lot of good moves.
They're fun to watch.
Let's talk about this defense of Bosa's there at number 5, which this guy was just, top 1, 2, 3, 4 pick.
But he's been sliding a little.
He's been sliding a little bit. I'm not a huge Bosa fan. Call me crazy. I don't know. I just got
You're
it.
crazy.
I got a little chip on my shoulder about the guy. No real reason why. I'm not a huge fan of him.
'Cause he's
I hate cocky players, and I'm not saying that he is, but something all the hype around him and stuff. I
Yeah.
just sometimes if it's too good to be true,
It
usually is.
Yeah, you just think that adds some baggage. Plus, another thing about Joey Bosa is he's got a weird nose.
Maybe that's why I don't like him.
like-
We're competing for nose size or
I don't,
something.
I don't like people with big noses.
Anyway, Bosa at number 5. I believe if Bosa gets into the right system, he could be a productive player. I would love to see him to fall to number 6. To the Ravens. I would love.
That
for him
was
to
my
go-
ideal pick. Honestly, that would be like my favorite pick in the top 10. I think he would.
I
fit
love
like a glove.
defensive football.
Yeah.
People
I agree.
weren't huge fans of the Super Bowl last year, but I love the defensive side of the game.
I agree.
It was an offensive show,
Yep.
home runs are great, but that doesn't always happen. These defensive guys go out there and they grind just as hard as anybody
Yeah.
else. And they're not catching a 70-yard touchdown pass or something crazy,
Yeah.
but they're just out there grinding. And the Panthers, I loved their defense last year. Denver, I'm a Cowboys fan. Where I was hoping he was going to get MVP. It was a long shot, but
Yeah, he
You
was
know.
close. He was probably number 2 on there.
I hated seeing him go. I know I'm sidetracking off the draft here, but I hated him seeing him going into a regular defensive end, and I'm glad that he went back with Wade Phillips
Yeah.
and he became productive.
Yeah, that was a weird.
The Ravens, if they can just get their defense back together again, while it's still repairable,
Yep.
I would love to see that.
And I talked about that in my video. When a team is built around the defense, and then that falters, when that's your main thing, you can't. It's like trying to.
Ravens
It's like
were
it's
trying
like
to
when you're
relo-
trying to build on top of foundation that's crumbling. If your foundation's crumbling, you can't build a good house.
Right.
And you keep trying to add floors and add layers, and it's not going to work unless you get your foundation right.
Right. And great Super Bowl teams typically are built around
All
great
defense.
defenses.
The only great offense, like as far as the best offenses of all time to win a Super Bowl, was The Greatest Show on Turf, 1999, on a last-second tackle at the 1, and they would have lost it if he didn't make that tackle.
Right.
So they were pretty close to losing that game. And if you just look at it's really ridiculous the amount of top 10 greatest offenses of all time that make it to the Super Bowl lose every time. Even just like in the playoffs, one and done, just lose. It's all about defense, and I'll bang the table till I'm dead. Running game, defense. I'm glad it's coming
Yeah.
back now a little bit, but it is incredibly important, and I hope the Jaguars go defense there.
I hope
That's
they
a-
do too,
that's a-
and I hope that the Ravens end up getting a strong
Me too.
defensive
I
player
still
in
like
the
Miles.
system.
I still like Miles Jack there. The medical.
He's another guy
reports-
that's been dropping down. On
Yeah,
on
because the
boards a little bit.
medical reports came back and they didn't look great, unfortunately. But I love that guy. I'm a UCLA fan. Like I said, I'm a new fan. But I would love to see him go high. And the Vikings have 2 UCLA linebackers from the last 2 drafts, and they played gangbusters for us. So I hope he goes there. If Joey Bosa goes, I don't know if he'll fit that scheme, but fingers crossed. So let's jump down a little bit here.
So we got San Francisco, and by the way, these two
Yeah.
trades that we were talking about at the beginning of this, Paxton Lynch is probably really happy because he's going to get a bigger contract out of the deal because
Yeah.
he went from bottom half of the draft to probably the top half of the draft. Pretty dang close to it.
And
The
I
49ers
really
don't go
yeah.
Lynch here. It
Yeah.
wouldn't surprise me if they did.
I hope they don't, but that's because I like Paxton Lynch, which sounds weird, but I really like Paxton Lynch a lot. He's my favorite quarterback in the draft. I don't think he's as good as Jared Goff or Carson Wentz, especially right away, but I think he has just as much upside or more than Carson Wentz. I love his deep ball accuracy. Like I've said, I'm a sucker for big arm quarterbacks. And it's not just that, though. It's that he ran an unusual offense in college, which people are knocking him for. But for some reason, I think it's a positive because he had said, he's like, hey, I ran a weird offense in high school, and then when I came to college, I learned this weird one, and it worked fine. He's
Right.
like, I just keep learning stuff. And I don't know, I just like him a lot. I think he's got a lot of leadership. The thing I don't like about Goff, now that we're kind of jumping around,
Right.
is he just doesn't seem like a leader. You know, he's not. It's not just that he's kind of quiet. It's just that I just don't see it in him, man. Like I don't know what it is.
And that's why I want him to go to LA.
Yeah,
It's
absolutely.
because, I mean, they've had people try and go in there and be leaders.
Yeah.
And their running game is a leader.
Yep. Todd
in that
Gurley.
offense.
Yeah, it's
They
probably.
don't need
yeah.
Wentz in that system. They need.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
And
they have actually some pretty good receivers in LA right
quietly, yeah.
now.
Tavon Austin,
Quick.
Brian Quick, and then Kenny Britt played pretty well last year.
They've had some decent receivers
yeah.
come into that system that haven't exactly panned out. And
Yeah.
it's not all their fault.
Yeah.
They just need an accurate quarterback that can be really subtle and not need the spotlight on him. I think that's best for him.
Yeah, and so with the Niners, I still think you should go defense here, because if there's who knows with Kaepernick if he's staying or going. Honestly, at this point, sounds like he's probably gonna stay.
I don't think he wants to play. Like he's this stone thing that's just gonna take his money and say, "Screw you guys! I just brought you guys to a Super Bowl just a few years ago."
Yeah,
and you just replaced me.
I just don't know.
They got rid of Alex Smith for.
I know that was a dumb move. I thought that was when they benched Smith for Kaepernick in 2012. I thought that was the dumbest move.
My buddy is a 49ers fan, and I actually bought him an Alex Smith jersey that year. And it must have been bad luck or something.
Yeah, he got Wally pipped. Are you familiar with that term?
No, I don't. Have you guys ever heard of Wally pipped?
Probably not. That's an old sports term for back in the way back in baseball history. Now, is this guy named Wally Pipp was this solid player, really good, one of the best players on the team for the Yankees, I believe, and one day he came into the facility and he was probably their best player at the time. You know, solid guy. He came into the facility and he had a headache. And so he was like, I don't know if I'm really feeling it. And the coach said, hey, we got this young guy. We want to give him some reps. You go ahead and sit down. That young guy was Lou Gehrig. And Wally Pipp never started another game.
Right.
So
like Tom Brady story there.
Yeah. So that's the Wally Pipp term.
Yeah,
it's called.
sure.
But yeah, he got the concussion. They sat him. And I love Alex Smith. And he was playing awesome. But the thing
Chiefs are playing good football.
They are.
Yeah.
We'll keep jumping around here.
There's obviously some people that are really standing out to us in this draft.
Yeah, let's talk about that. What are some of your standouts? Are there any players
I know it's way down the list
that you're higher on that some people aren't as high on?
Obviously, where is he? I'm just looking at the mock draft over here.
He's not just touching my bed right now.
Kind of froze up and lost his name. You know who I'm talking about. I know who you're talking about.
I don't know who you're talking
Shaq Lawson.
Oh, yeah.
I'm a big Shaq Lawson fan, and actually, Kevin Dodd, who you actually had in your top 10,
Mm-hmm.
has been working his way down the list. While Shaq Lawson's been working his way up. I don't know what these experts say and how they figure this out. I mean,
Nothing's changed.
what are these guys like?
I don't get why.
He sat at home and watched Netflix like 7 seasons of Friends, so he's gonna move down the list. I have no
Yeah,
idea. Like,
it shows that he doesn't have as much intensity. It could be soft.
Who knows how these guys come up with this? I do like Shaq Lawson. I know he's kind of just had 1 year of good football there, but I really like him. He's a work hard kind of guy. I was a big Ware fan, like I was saying, and Ware was a work hard kind of guy. I would love to see Shaq Lawson get in a really good system and make some havoc. There's nothing better than a quarterback getting hit. Obviously, not so much in the NFL today, but it's still
GMs don't
great
want to
football.
hear that. Yeah. One guy that I really like that I've been talking about is Leonard Floyd from Georgia, the outside linebacker, and he's been climbing a lot of people's boards lately. Because before he was kind of down towards the bottom, and again now he's climbing up. The minute I threw on his tape, I was like, I fucking love this guy, man. I mean, he really just shoots out of a cannon. So good he's such a great pass rusher, and against the run, played really well. Elite speed, but he's big, and I don't know, just throw on the tape, I was like, this guy's a player. I want this guy on my team. So I'm kind of glad he's climbing up people's boards. So I had him going to the Bears at 11, but you'll have to see. Another one people like a lot that's climbing people's boards is Sheldon Rankins out of Louisville.
Okay.
That defensive tackle. He's kind of shorter, but when you watch his tape, he's the guy who's super athletic, and you're just like, this guy can play. He can play football. He doesn't have to be huge. He's like one of the most athletic nose tackles I've maybe ever seen. Like, he's extremely.
And who do they have him going to right now? You said.
Right there, he's 12. And before he was down
going
there.
to the Saints at number 12.
I have him going to obviously my mock draft is busted because of all these trades. So
the only thing we can really rely on at this point is some other mock drafts that are out there where people do this for a living.
Right. So yeah, it looks like.
And then Treadwell. Should we?
Laquan Treadwell is really dropping.
And obviously the Vikings are possibly looking for another threat this year, which is never bad to have around a young quarterback. Solid run game in Minnesota, but not always doing it right in the past. Right now they're kind of a 2 touchdown, 2 interception, and obviously in the playoff game, I know it's hard for Vikings fans to bring it up now, but obviously there should have been a touchdown there. I feel like there should have been some sort of score there, some type of scoring play to put Seattle away from that whatsoever.
I don't know what you're talking about. That game never happened, dude.
I'm not a huge Minnesota fan, but that was just disappointing. I mean, if that was my team right there, obviously I didn't want Seattle moving on in the playoffs or having another chance at another Super Bowl.
We're not getting into that right now.
All right. Anyway, Treadwell to the Vikings could be a great
Could, and for some, he had a slower 40, so he's dropping, and it's like, he's a big guy. He was never a fast receiver, so I don't get what people are.
A hands guy in Minnesota isn't going to hurt anything.
No, I know. And I probably like Josh Doxson better. I'm not really sold on either of them, but I think he would fit probably us. He would probably do the best with a system like ours.
And the Bengals are right behind you guys. And
there could be a run of receivers there.
Yeah. Cincinnati really needs some. They lost a lot of receivers and a couple of big threats there.
Mohamed Sanu, and then Marvin Jones.
Right. And so they could really use another receiver there, and I think whoever goes to Cincinnati could really have a good career there for a little while.
Mohamed Sanu came out of Rutgers, and when he got drafted, here's a fun story. He was kind of projected to be a late first, early, second round type guy. He ended up going in the third, but it was in the first round, and he actually got prank called when the Bengals were on the clock, and somebody told him the Bengals picked him in the first round, and he thought he was going to the Bengals, and it was a prank call, and then he was really upset.
That's
And then
gotta be
the
worst prank call
Bengals
ever.
ended up taking him in the third round, which was really cool. So it's like, fuck. But then, well, I'm going there anyway.
Now, I don't really know much about.
Let's talk about William Jackson. The third.
You want to talk about William Jackson?
Yeah.
I do like Eli Apple.
Mhm.
William Jackson the third seems like the Raiders are a really good spot for him to land at.
Rod Woodson left a hole for
Yeah.
sure, and
Yeah,
nobody's
absolutely.
going to fill that.
I don't
He's
know how
one of the
many.
best.
I don't know the numbers. He had a few picks last year. I remember seeing a few of them on the highlight reel.
He had 2 against Manning in one game. I think he ended up with 6, maybe 4 to 6.
Four. I'm leaning towards 4.
But a Pro Bowl
those
winner.
are. I mean, for an older guy in his last year, those are great numbers. 4 picks, and with
Played
that
both
offense,
corner and safety,
Right.
which is huge.
Right. I would love that. Obviously, Oakland is another team that's been on a lot of people's radar. I would like for them to make sure that their defense is in a position to win that division potentially.
Yeah, and they need to build up their defense. Their offense played well last year, and they have Khalil Mack, who I fell in
Guy's a
love
stud.
with.
Guy's a stud.
Yeah,
mean,
when I saw his tape when he was coming out, I was like, I want this guy. He is awesome, but didn't get him. We ended up with Anthony Barr, and he's played really well. Actually, he probably fit our system better, but I still.
and that's
kinda
another
like
thing.
Mack.
Jackson the third seems to fit Oakland really, really well.
Yeah, probably.
I don't know where he'll end up going.
A lot
if
of
he
people
doesn't
like
get
him
picked
going to Pittsburgh.
Right, and that's
That
another
was-
team, defensive team we've been talking
Yeah.
about that needs to kick it in the butt and get
Did-
back to work.
Did you watch my latest mock draft?
I did watch the latest
So
mock draft.
I did talk about William Jackson on there, and one of the things that I watched on tape was right away I was like, "Oh, this guy's making a lot of like big plays. Like, wow, this guy's fun to watch." But then it just kind of hit me where it was this one play. It was in the end zone, and he the receiver had him beat, and he was like turned the opposite way. Somehow he reached around, knocked the ball out of his hands, and it wasn't a touchdown. But I was like, he blew that coverage, but he was just able to make up for it. And then the more plays I was watching, I was like, he jumped that route. They could have beat him on a double move there. And then it was stuff like that where I was like, this dude is a playmaker and he's a
threat.
ball hawk, but his fundamentals aren't sound. So I think it'll be a little bit of a steeper learning curve for him.
It might, it
Unfortunately.
might take a couple years.
Which is
it
why
might take
he's
a couple
not-
years for a lot of these guys.
Yeah, it could.
But
And
and
that's
like
not
you
a
said
bad
at the beginning of this,
Yeah.
GMs are playing for the future.
Yep.
And if Jackson fits any position in Oakland, whoever is on the board at that time that fits into your system that has the highest value, and if it's Jackson the third, I say go after him. Get a ball hawk.
Yeah.
Get a guy that can cause problems
Yeah.
on defense.
And if he won't start his rookie year, that doesn't matter. Like if you're gonna get a guy who's gonna be a solid starting corner for 6-8 years,
Right.
that's awesome.
That's
Like,
great value.
That's so
That's
rare.
huge.
Like you don't get those.
You get past
know?
the third round, and some of these guys might be somewhere else next year.
Yeah.
They might not be on the field for any games
Yep.
this year. So if you can find a guy that's going to end up playing,
Yeah.
8 games this year, and maybe
Mhm.
getting a couple interceptions and working from there,
Huge.
Blake Bortles was
Yeah.
one of those guys that has been panning out really, really well.
Mhm.
And in the first
He-
year, we weren't so sure.
He threw a lot of picks,
Right.
but they stuck with him, and he was always a project guy, and he's come on really well.
Yeah, these quarterbacks, I feel like some of these guys are retiring.
Because look at RG3, since you brought him up earlier. He, everybody was really high on him, and he came out for the Redskins. And that rookie year, he played amazing. That was an incredible year
It
he had
was.
in general.
And
Just watching
obviously, a
him-
Cowboys fan,
Yeah.
I was scared to death.
Yeah, you thought
because this
10
guy was
years of
a
this.
running quarterback, and I was like,
Yeah.
all right, our defense has to figure this team out because we play him twice a year.
Yeah, and you thought 10, 15 years we're
I
going to
thought
deal
we
with
were-
this.
I was like, I don't want this thing going on for the next few years.
And then
Yeah.
what happened? He got kind of beat up. And then the dumb thing was, I didn't agree with the coaches. they tried to put him into a pro style offense. His rookie year, they had kind of a weird running pistol point and shoot offense, which was really dumbed down
Kind of like
for
a
him.
Cam offense over there in
Yeah,
Carolina, right?
Sort of, yeah. And it's like, and then they were like, no, you have to like do something you're not good at, which made no sense. Plus, he was hurt, and so then when you get hurt and then you're trying to get in a system you don't fit in, it doesn't work.
He's gonna have to in Cleveland if he's, and obviously they must be high up on him because they just traded down.
Yeah,
I think they must think that he has something there.
When Hugh Jackson, his comment about RG3's workout for him, he said, the earth shook.
I believe it. I know that guy's.
I don't know how many earthquakes happen in Cleveland, but it's weird that it happened at the same time during the workout. That's a bad joke.
I talking about that RG3, I just don't know if he's a scrambler anymore. I don't know how well that knee is. AP obviously came back and did a really good job, but it doesn't work out all the time for everyone.
No.
And I would like to see him. He has a cannon for an arm. I'd like to see him more like a Culpepper. With a deep. He has a deep ball that's really pretty.
Which is weird because he's so short. It's weird that he can just.
He's got a cannon for an arm, and
one thing I wanted to say about RG3 is it was like I think that would be. I remember for a while, I was subscribed to ESPN magazines, and they had those big, they were the big magazines. And it was before the 2012 draft, which is a fun draft because Andrew Luck was coming out, the best quarterback prospect since John Elway, everyone's saying. And then RG3 is this other guy from Baylor who has phenomenal tape, is this athlete, really fun to watch, and it was kind of a fun, like, who's better, Andrew Luck, RG3. And
John Gruden had that little skit of a TV show thing.
Yeah,
and everybody's like, who's better, Luck or...
Yeah. And in that article, they had a front page of him, and so he was the main article, and it was when he was coming out. And I remember reading it, and something stuck out to me in there was that they said that I think when he was in high school, or maybe it was like his freshman year at Baylor, he tweaked his knee, like didn't seriously hurt it, but he kind of hurt it a little bit, and he was down in the dumps. Like he was depressed, and his dad had to fly to his college or whatever and start personally working him out like they did when he was younger to get him back in, and they had to work really hard. And then so the minute he got hurt, I was like, I don't know how.
And he tried rushing it coming back. I really do.
He did.
And there's a lot.
He shouldn't have played. He was playing with a huge brace on for 2 games. Oh, terrible.
He knew he wanted to be the guy, and he had a lot of pressure coming behind him, obviously.
Yep.
For that starting role at quarterback, and he needed to fill into that spot and be able to just try and wean it out until he got better on his own terms. Unfortunately, like we were saying in the NFL, one day you're in, one day you're out, and luckily he has a second chance in Cleveland.
Yeah,
it could be good.
But I just think, like I was talking about earlier with looking at the future, with RG3, I'm sure fans were like, this is it. We're set. This is what the draft is for. You take a guy, he helps you right away. You become a playoff team, But it didn't work out. And, maybe it was because of injuries, but that was part of it, and then the system fit. But really, like, his career, I don't know if it's going to work out. But if you look at, guys like, I don't know, I'll just use a Vikings player as an example because I know them the best.
Right.
But Chad Greenway, we're in South Dakota. He's a South Dakota guy.
Right.
I love him. He's one of my favorite players of all time. But he was a first-round pick by the Vikings and was a starter he tore his ACL his rookie year, didn't play.
Right.
And so then right away you think, God, we wasted a first-round pick. Like, what are we going to do? This season's over. And he's been a fantastic starter. I think only one Pro Bowl, but a really great starter.
Well, he's
his whole
huge
career.
in Minnesota.
So, like, my point is that you don't have to be like a DeMarcus Ware, like you said, a first-rounder who's a 10-time Pro Bowler
and
is making all these plays. A first-round pick is to help your team in the future. And like I think Chad Greenway is a good like he's had a fantastic career. He'll be in the Vikings Hall of Fame. He probably won't be in the Pro Football Hall of Fame. But that's not a failure. That's an awesome
And just
career.
like we're talking about with, Ezekiel Elliott, the one thing that really stands out to me is because that guy's a 3-down back. Now, the reason why I like that is so we don't have to substitute every time. Now, Chad Greenway is a guy that he's down. He's in the game. 3 plays, he's in there on every play. And if you can do that in the NFL, that's a success right there.
Absolutely.
That's nothing to be ashamed of.
Yeah, the average NFL career is like 3 years.
Yeah.
Which is crazy. Which people are like, that's not true. But it is, because if you think about all the guys that people sign or that were on practice squads and stuff, like, and just injuries alone that take out careers and everything, like, it's pretty rare. And if you can get a solid starter for your team, through the long haul, that's what the draft is all about.
And, talking about the Tennessee Titans, they have a bunch of picks.
Yeah. Yeah,
in the first 3 rounds. And so you're going to get some good quality guys. Mm-hmm. And if you can find guys that can play 10, 20 plays a game consistently, these guys could just revamp the entire team.
Yeah, they could build. That's how
they have a
Cowboys. That's how the Cowboys built their dynasty in the '90s. Was the Herschel Walker trade? I'm sure people are familiar with it, to the Vikings, he had one good game and that was it. But we gave up just an incredible amount of picks. That is insane. And the Cowboys had one of the best drafts ever, the best series of drafts with all those picks they got, which was nuts. And the Tennessee Titans have an opportunity to do that. They have to draft well, and if you can find a starter.
Not all these guys are going to pan out. No, the majority of them do.
I would be more excited as a Titans fan that we got all those picks and got out of the first round.
I'm excited for the Titans.
Instead of getting, one high end player, like a solid number 1 player, you get at least one solid player. And then a chance to have all the if all these guys end up being
sometimes
starters,
a football team needs numbers.
Yeah.
Sometimes you got to get these young guys in there into the system.
Yeah, you got to
they can mesh together and figure it out together.
And they are a young team, which is good. And they're in a tough division. The Colts could be great any given year. They could be bad. The Texans could be good or bad. I don't know. Either way, the Jaguars are up and coming. It's an interesting division.
That's going to be one to watch this upcoming season. I would love to see how these young players end up panning out.
So you were saying you liked that other corner from
Eli Apple. Yeah,
Eli Apple.
I don't think that anybody can get too down.
It's
on the
weird,
guy.
because Eli Apple, Vernon Hargraves, and that other guy from. I think he's on here. Artie Burns are all similar to me. If you watch all their tape, they look almost like the same guy. They all have similar uniforms, and they're all smaller, athletic, which was kind of interesting.
Do you know anything about this this tight end Hunter Henry? In this mock draft, they have him going 22 to Houston. I know that he's rated the top tight end in the draft.
He's not.
Is he first round material? I
think
don't know.
I don't know. I don't think so. I would do high second round, late first for sure. I don't even know if he's worth the first, but he's I watched some tape on him. He was pretty good. He reminded me of a Heath Miller, Owen Daniels type.
I thought J.J. Watt was a tight end, and no, he just does that part time.
He's pretty good though.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm glad you brought that up. Speaking of J.J. Watt, the other thing with the draft that we always talk about is you never know, and with anything in the NFL, you literally never know. In 2011, that was a fun draft. That was the first draft I really did a mock draft for and got really big into, which was awesome that was the first one. But I was convinced that J.J. Watt would be a bust. I was like, there's no way this guy's going to be good.
And I'm sitting here saying Joey Bosa is going to be
and
the bust.
And already J.J. Watt is one of the best defensive players ever. he's on the level of
he's
Lawrence
the
Taylor.
offense in Texas, like for that team. I don't,
Yeah, I think he's honestly on the level of Lawrence Taylor almost. With all those
he's
defensive player of
definitely
the
right
years.
up there.
And he said recently that he's going to retire the minute his play starts to go down. So it could be 2-3 years and he'll retire, which bodes well if you want to be in the Hall of Fame, actually, which is kind of weird.
Yeah.
But so, like we said, we never know. I'm always an optimist. I really want to believe that all these guys are going to work out.
Yeah, me too. I mean, you sit here and you look at these guys and you look at tape and you want all of these guys to pan out.
I mean, they're real people, and it's hard
except for the teams in your division.
Yeah,
Obviously, but.
you don't want the and it's hard to forget, or it's hard to remember that these are real people.
Absolutely.
You know, like they're our age, honestly,
Right.
coming out, and they're starting their lives, and you just hope for the best. I don't ever want anyone to be hurt, and since they've been little kids, they probably
I
have
hope
all
that
they ever
all
wanted
these
to do.
defensive guys pan out,
Yeah,
and we
I
have
do too.
solid defenses all over the place.
I do too.
I mean, I love a good Hail Mary pass and all that,
Yeah.
but I love defensive guys just knocking people down.
Yeah.
And, that's the brute thing about football, and that's the tough thing to do about football is go out there and get
Yeah.
hit on every play. And
Yep.
I hope that these defensive line guys just pan out really, really
too.
well.
Well, I think it's about time that we wrap it up. But if you guys wanted to, definitely comment on the video. Let us
Absolutely.
know. Tell me how red exactly is his beard. Did it hurt your eyesight? Don't give me a dislike because of it. Still like it, but I'm not going to pay for your medical bills for your eyes. Is there anything else you wanted to leave you guys with?
Just as far as like the mock draft stuff, this is my first one. I've never been on here and talked about this stuff. I think it's great. Anybody have any information, players they love, players they hate? We talked about players that we thought were busts.
Mhm.
I was Joey Bosa. Did you have one?
I'm not huge on Jalen Smith. Even before he got hurt, I wasn't huge
Okay.
on him. So,
And actually, that guy might end up going to a team and being a sleeper pick
Yeah.
for someone.
Who knows?
Who knows how? Please tell us your thoughts. Thanks for having me on the
Yeah,
show. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. And you guys know as much as we do, and honestly as much as the people on TV, because you never know anything, honestly. So, yeah, it was fun. The next video, we'll do a draft recap, probably. And just-
Thursday, we got a couple of days left, and this thing's gonna happen.
Yeah.
It's gonna be awesome.
I'm really excited.
This first round, please sit down, watch
yeah.
this thing.
And if you haven't done a mock draft, don't feel bad. It's so much fun because you get to actually look into these players and you get a connection with them. And then years down the road, you're like, oh, I remember,
Right.
being high on that guy. And it is actually a lot of fun. So I really encourage you guys to do that. Who cares and don't just pick the same ones that the experts pick. I know it's easy to fall into that, but honestly, if you stick to what you think, you might be closer than the experts because the experts change them all the time. But thanks again for coming on, Andrew. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
And we're going to go live our lives, and
You
should
will
do the
yours.
same. It was close.